Maggie Turner had always dreaded overnight train rides, but this one felt different. The low hum of the wheels against the track, the flickering lights, and the stale coffee created an atmosphere that was too heavy. She had taken the New York to Boston train countless times, but tonight something gnawed at her, a subtle unease she couldn't shake. She tried to ignore it, immersing herself in her book, but the whispers around her grew louder. The other passengers were tense, restless. A man near the front of the car kept glancing back at the first-class section, and Maggie caught his nervous expression. Then it started. A heated argument, barely audible at first, rose from the first-class cabin. Maggie strained to hear. It was a woman pleading, a man dismissive and cold. The words were unintelligible, but the tension in the voices was undeniable. Suddenly, there was a sharp crash, a thud, a sickening, final thud. Maggie froze, her heart pounding. It had sounded like someone had been struck, violently. She scanned the car, but the other passengers remained oblivious. The train rattled on, and the shadows of the cabin deepened. Her breath caught in her throat. Should she go check? Maybe it was nothing, a simple argument that escalated. But the certainty gnawed at her insides. Someone was hurt, possibly killed. Maggie stood up, her hands shaking as she made her way to the vestibule. Her legs wobbled beneath her, heart pounding. She had to do something, she had to report it. But the closer she got to the first-class section, the more dread filled her chest. A man in a dark suit stood in front of the door. His eyes locked onto hers as she approached. His expression was unreadable. "Everything all right, ma'am?" he asked, his voice too calm. I heard something," Maggie stammered. "I think someone's been hurt." There was an argument, and then a thud. "It sounded like," she faltered, "like someone was attacked." The man studied her for a moment, his gaze piercing. "It's probably nothing," he said, his voice dismissive. "Go back to your seat. People argue all the time. There's no reason to make a scene. You misheard it. Go back." Maggie's heart sank. "But Please," he interrupted, his tone firm. "We don't need to bother anyone with every little noise. Just go sit down." Maggie's mouth went dry. She wanted to protest, to argue, but something in the man's eyes held her back. He wasn't concerned. He was confident, unbothered. Something about that didn't sit right with her. She returned to her seat, but the unease didn't leave. She tried to read, tried to distract herself, but all she could hear was the thud echoing in her mind, a chilling reminder of what she'd witnessed. Hours passed in silence, but Maggie couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Her thoughts raced. The man's dismissive attitude, the fact that no one seemed concerned, it all felt staged, too controlled. She knew she couldn't let it go. As the train neared Boston, Maggie couldn't stop thinking about what she had overheard. She had to speak up. She needed to know what happened. The urge to act, to expose the truth, grew stronger. She stepped off the train, her stomach in knots, and made her way to the station's security booth. "I need to report something," she said, her voice shaking. There was an argument on the train. I think it ended with someone being hurt." The officer behind the counter didn't look up from her paperwork. "What kind of incident?" she asked flatly. Maggie hesitated, trying to find the right words. "I overheard an argument." And then there was a loud crash, followed by a thud, like something, or someone, was struck. The officer barely acknowledged her. "Are you sure?" she asked with an air of indifference. "You probably misheard it. People get worked up on trains sometimes." "No," Maggie said, her voice trembling. "I know what I heard. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. Someone was hurt, maybe worse." The officer glanced at her with irritation. "You need to calm down. People get paranoid on overnight trips. I'll make a note of it, but it's probably nothing." Maggie felt her chest tighten. She wasn't imagining this. "You don't understand. I heard the sounds, I heard the screams. Something's wrong." "Ma'am, it's nothing. Just go home. You're overreacting." Maggie's heart sank. This wasn't right. She couldn't leave. "I'm not going anywhere until I know what happened." The officer sighed, looking over at the security guard. They exchanged a glance, and the guard made a slow, deliberate motion to indicate Maggie should leave. "There's no need to make trouble. This is being handled." The words were cold, dismissive, the same words she'd heard on the train. It was all too much to ignore now. Maggie wasn't crazy. She wasn't going to let it go. The next few days were a blur of doubt and frustration. Maggie couldn't stop thinking about the events on the train. She began asking other passengers about the incident, but no one seemed to recall anything. It was as if everyone had chosen to forget, to deny what had happened. But then, one name kept popping up: Sophie Reynolds, a woman who had been seated in first class, traveling alone. Maggie's blood ran cold as she learned more about Sophie. She was connected to a powerful group, involved with people who had no tolerance for loose ends. It was starting to make sense. Sophie had been silenced, but Maggie had heard too much. The more Maggie dug, the more the pieces fell into place. Sophie hadn't been the only target. Sophie had been an accident, caught in the middle of something much darker. The real target, the person behind the murder, was someone closer to Maggie than she could have ever imagined. Someone in her circle. Someone she trusted. Maggie's mind raced as she tried to piece it all together. She hadn't just overheard a crime. She had stumbled upon a conspiracy, something so far-reaching that the authorities were involved in covering it up. It wasn't just the officers who had dismissed her, it was the entire system. She had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, and now she was paying the price. She knew she couldn't go to the police anymore. They were in on it. The same people who had told her to let it go were the ones orchestrating the silence. Maggie was on her own, and she was starting to realize that she might not get out of this alive. The last time Maggie saw anyone connected to the case, it was in a darkened alley in Boston. She had received an anonymous tip about a meeting. But when she arrived, there was no meeting, just the cold, silent stare of someone who knew too much. The man stepped forward and whispered, "You've heard too much." Before she could respond, a sharp pain pierced her side, and the world went black. The train ride was only the beginning. What happened next would haunt her forever. Follow, like, share, and comment for part 2 and find out if she got justice.